So Jainism is another response or religion that kind of came out of Hinduism, or at least a response to Hinduism. So it was begun in India in the 6th century BCE, and there are a number of canonical texts to Jainism, but the basic belief is that the universe has always existed, so we don't have this problem of creation of the world. But the cycle of life and death that souls endure isn't eternal, so souls cycle through 8.4 million birth situations in 5 different types of bodies. So there's earth bodies, water bodies, fire bodies, air bodies, and vegetable bodies. And so for Jainism, every living thing has some kind of life. So this is a bit like panpsychism, which we talked about in the Philosophy of Mind chapter. So when a soul is liberated, it can become omniscient and remain in the higher realm eternally. So this is kind of the idea of escaping from the cycle of birth and death. So the idea of karma in Jainism is a bit different. There's this enduring soul, which Buddhism, as we remember, does not have. And unlike some forms of Hinduism where Brahman is everything and there aren't really individuals, there are individual souls for Jainism, and they're not part of a larger God or part of the universe. But also interestingly, karma is a form of matter, and it pulls the soul back into the body. So accumulating any kind of karma is bad, since even good karma won't release you from the cycle of birth and death. And Jainism is even stricter about morality than Buddhism, especially the part about not harming other creatures. And again, because it believes that every creature, and even plants, have souls. So, but it does, according to Jainism, the amount that creatures can be helped or harmed depends on how many senses they have. So humans have 5 senses, and possibly the 6th sense is consciousness for Jains. So our moral obligations towards humans are greater, but they're also pretty great toward animals as well. So even plants, according to Jainism, have at least 1 sense. So vegetarianism is required, but even that is a bit morally suspect, because you are still eating something as a vegetarian that has at least 1 sense. So the highest way to be a Jain is to just sit still and starve to death, and instead of killing yourself, because that's the only way to not harm other creatures. So short of this, Jains, especially the monks, don't own very many possessions, and that's why sometimes Jainism is represented by a monk or a teacher who is naked, because this is a symbolic gesture of non-possession. So souls that are particularly bad can enter the Hava state, and they can never reach enlightenment from that state. So Jainism is also, though, very serious about skepticism, which again the Buddha was not interested in, the Buddhism is not founded on. And the idea is that reality is multifaceted, and each sense or way of reasoning gives an incomplete picture. And they talk about this in an illustration of the example of blind people who can each touch or sense a certain part of an elephant but can't see the whole thing, can't experience the whole thing, and that none of them will be able to understand really what an elephant is in that sense. And so no one can give final judgment on any matter according to Jains, leaving everything uncertain. But as Shankara and others have pointed out, this leads to the problem that any skeptical theory faces, which is that the theory itself is subject to its own skepticism. So you can't really say that you have a theory of anything if you don't have certainty of anything. So even Jainism itself can't be believed with certainty then if nothing is certain. So this is a problem for Jainism. But this is the general kind of belief system that one of the many that rose up out of responses to Hinduism.